Mama Ronke's kitchen was a name that made mouths water. It was once a place of comfort. The kind of spot where people gathered for lunch after church, where laughter mixed with the sound of clinking spoons and bubbling pots. Back then, the aroma of our stew used to drift far beyond the four corners of our restaurant, pulling people in from nearby streets. Taxi drivers, bankers, artisans, market women, everyone knew that Mama Ronke's food could heal sadness and wake a tired soul. There was something about her cooking that no one could explain. The pepper was never too much, the salt never too little. It had a taste that lingered on your tongue, like a secret. But when Mama Ronke died, the magic died with her. Her only daughter, Ronke, took over the restaurant after the funeral. At first, she wore her mother's apron proudly, believing she would continue the legacy. She followed the recipes faithfully, cooked with care, and opened the restaurant every morning by 6 a.m. just like her mother used to. But something was missing. The first few customers frowned after taking a bite. Some forced polite smiles and said, "It's nice," before leaving half their food untouched. Others didn't bother pretending. "This too no get soul again," one man said, pushing his plate away. Another laughed and said, "The woman wey die carry her flavor go grave." The whispers started spreading. People said Ronke couldn't cook. Others said she had changed her mother's recipes. Within months, the once busy kitchen became empty. Tables gathered dust, and the air that used to smell of pepper and joy became stale with disappointment. Ronke tried everything. She changed the meat cellar. She used more spices. She even hired a new cook to assist her. But no matter what she did, the taste remained flat, hollow, lifeless. She watched other restaurants grow while hers fell apart. Across the street, a new booker called Mama Busy Delight opened, and every afternoon, crowds gathered there. The sound of laughter and the smell of frying meat tormented Ronke. At night, she would sit on the kitchen stool her mother used to sit on, staring at the pots that no longer brought happiness. Sometimes she spoke to her mother's photo hanging on the wall. "Mama, what am I doing wrong? Tell me. Please." The photo never answered, but Ronke began to feel strange whenever she looked at it. Almost like it was watching her. There was a small locked door in the back of the kitchen, one her mother never allowed anyone to enter. It was painted a dull red and always smelled faintly of something metallic. Her mother had warned her as a child, "No one must open that room except me. Promise me, Ronke." And she did. But now, with debts piling up, customers gone, and shame eating her alive, that door began to haunt her. She'd catch herself staring at it for minutes, wondering what could possibly be inside. One night, after another long day of no customers, she broke down completely. She sat on the floor and wept, her sobs echoing through the empty restaurant. Then she remembered something, an old woman her mother used to visit in our corridor. A spiritualist. People used to say she was the reason Mama Ronke always had good luck. Ronke made up her mind. She would find her. The next morning, she traveled early, taking a rickety bus that coughed smoke all the way to our corridor. The address she had was old, but she followed it. The house stood deep in the bush, surrounded by shrines and the smell of burnt incense. The woman was still alive. Her skin looked like it had seen centuries, and her eyes burned with quiet knowing. "My mother used to come here," Ronke said, bowing slightly. Her name was Laura. She owned a restaurant. The woman looked at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Yes. I remember Laura. A woman who wanted her food to taste better than everyone else's. She paid the price for it." "What price?" Ronke asked, her heart beating fast. The woman smiled faintly. "Your mother's stew was not ordinary. It drew people because it contained human flesh." Ronke froze. She felt her legs weaken. That's impossible." The old woman chuckled softly. "Nothing is impossible in this world, child. Your mother made a pact with the spirits of appetite. She fed them human flesh, and in return, they blessed her with taste that no tongue could forget. But when she stopped feeding them, they came for her life. Ronke trembled. No. Mama couldn't have done that. Believe what you want. But that is why your food no longer tastes the same. The spirits are hungry. And if you want your restaurant to live again, you must feed them. Ronke felt tears gather in her eyes. How? How would I even do such a thing? The woman leaned closer, her breath hot and heavy. In your mother's kitchen, there is a room she told you never to enter. Inside, you will find the remnants of her offering. But remember this, no one must enter that room but you. If anyone sees what lies within, the spirits will be angry, and the curse will turn against you. Ronke wanted to run. To scream. But her mind was no longer her own. The words of the old woman looped in her head like a chant, feed them, and they will feed you. She returned home late that night. The restaurant was dark and silent. Rain tapped softly against the roof as she stood before the locked door. Her hands shook as she inserted the key she had found among her mother's things. The smell that hit her when the door creaked open nearly knocked her down. It was thick, metallic, sour, the smell of blood and old rot. Inside was a small table, a rusted refrigerator humming faintly, and stains on the floor that looked like dried brown paint but weren't. She covered her mouth and stepped inside. Her eyes caught a framed picture on the wall, her mother, smiling. Beneath it, an old wooden box filled with strange charms, dried herbs, and something that looked like a tiny human hand. Ronke stumbled back, shaking her head. She wanted to close the door and forget, but curiosity, or something darker, drew her toward the refrigerator. She opened it. Inside were slabs of frozen meat, grayish and oddly shaped. They didn't look like goat meat. They didn't look like beef. Something inside her screamed, "Don't touch it." But another voice whispered, "This is what she used. This is how she succeeded." The next day, Ronke went to the market early. She cooked as she always did, but this time, she added a few pieces of that strange meat into her mother's old stew pot. The smell that rose from the pot nearly brought her to tears. It was rich, thick, perfect. The kind of aroma she hadn't smelled since her mother died. That afternoon, she served the food to her first few customers. They cleaned their plates and asked for more. By the end of the week, word spread across the neighborhood, Mama Ronke's kitchen is back. People returned in crowds. They praised her. They said her stew tasted even better than before. Some said it had a flavor that made them dream at night. Ronke felt alive again. She smiled as her restaurant buzzed with laughter and the clatter of spoons. But beneath her joy, a quiet fear began to grow. Because she knew what she had done. And she knew she would have to do it again. The freezer in the secret room was getting emptier by the day. And the spirits were hungry. The aroma of Mama Ronke's kitchen returned to the streets like a ghost resurrected. From dawn till dusk, the little yellow building was crowded again. People queued outside, shouting orders, waving money, laughing about how Mama Ronke's daughter Dawn finally gets sense. Everywhere else, restaurants struggled to compete. But Ronke's stew had become a phenomenon. It was said that her food could cure a hangover, lift a bad mood, even mend a broken heart. The money came in like a flood. She bought new chairs, repainted the walls, and changed the signboard to read "The Butcher's Delight." People laughed at the name, thinking it was clever. Only she knew how true it was. Each night, when the last customer left, she would sneak into the back room and lock the door. The smell no longer bothered her, she was used to it now. Inside the freezer were wrapped pieces of meat from sources she refused to think too deeply about. Sometimes, she told herself the flesh came from bodies no one would miss, the homeless, the forgotten. But deep down, she knew that wasn't always true. Because once the spirits began to whisper to her, the lines between right and wrong blurred. They came to her in her dreams, shadowy figures with hollow eyes and sharp smiles. They told her who to take next. They promised her that as long as she fed them, her name would live forever. She obeyed. Each full moon, she would mix herbs and chant the words the spiritualist had taught her. The air in the room would grow thick, the walls would seem to breathe, and she would feel her mother's presence behind her, guiding her hand. And every time she finished, the stew the next day tasted better than before. The city worshipped her food. Journalists came to write about her. Television stations interviewed her. They called her the woman with the golden spoon. And that was how Chuka, a popular food blogger, heard about her. Chuka was known across Nigeria for his viral food reviews. He traveled from city to city, eating in local spots and exposing their secrets. His followers loved him because he didn't lie. If your food was bad, he'd say it straight. If your hygiene was terrible, he'd post it online. When he heard of the Butcher's Delight, he decided to visit. He told his followers, "They say this stew can make you forget your problems. Let's see what's really cooking inside." The day he arrived, Ronke was busy at the counter, smiling at customers. She didn't notice him at first, but she felt his presence, tall, calm, confident, with the camera always recording. He ordered the special goat meat stew. The first spoonful froze him. His eyes widened. "This is incredible," he whispered to himself. He ate more, savoring each bite. The meat melted in his mouth, the spice balance was perfect. But then, something strange happened. Halfway through, he began to feel dizzy. A heat spread through his chest, then a strange calmness. He blinked and looked around. The world seemed to blur slightly. The smell of stew thickened in his nostrils, almost intoxicating. He left the restaurant smiling, but deep inside, something itched. Something about that taste didn't feel natural. That night, he uploaded a short video praising the Butcher's Delight, calling it the most hauntingly perfect stew in Lagos. The video went viral. Crowds doubled overnight. But as days passed, Chuka couldn't sleep. He kept dreaming of blood, knives, and boiling pots. He'd wake up sweating, his tongue still tasting that stew. He began to investigate. He returned to the area, asking locals about the restaurant's history. An old man told him that place used to belong to Mama Ronke. Her daughter took over after she died. But the taste died too, until recently. Chuka asked, "What changed?" The man shrugged. "Who knows? But strange things happen there at night. Sometimes, you hear cries behind the walls. The woman locks herself in the kitchen after everyone goes." That was all Chuka needed. He decided he would get to the bottom of it. The next week, he returned pretending to shoot a follow-up video. He asked Ronke if he could film her cooking process. She refused politely. "No, my dear, my recipe is private. Family secret." He smiled, but suspicion had already taken root. That night, he returned again, this time after hours. The street was quiet, the restaurant dark. He slipped in through the back fence, his camera light barely visible. He tiptoed through the kitchen. Everything looked ordinary, clean pots, stacked plates, leftover spices. Then he noticed the red door at the end of the hall. It was padlocked. But the smell. It wasn't the smell of ordinary meat. It was sharp, heavy, almost metallic. He pressed his ear against the door. Something inside hummed, like an old refrigerator. His curiosity burned hotter than fear. He pulled out a small metal rod and forced the padlock open. It clicked softly. He pushed the door. The air that escaped was cold and rotten. His camera light flickered as it scanned the room. Old stains covered the walls. Charms hung from the ceiling. A table stood in the center with knives arranged neatly beside an empty basin. Against the wall, the humming freezer. He opened it. The camera captured what his mind refused to believe. Stacks of human limbs, neatly wrapped. A head, partially frozen, eyes half open. Chuka staggered back, bile rising in his throat. He clutched his mouth, his camera still recording. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Then, a sound. Footsteps. He turned and saw Ronke standing at the doorway. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, a cleaver in her hand. "No one was supposed to see this," she whispered. He stumbled back, shaking. What have you done?" The air changed. The temperature dropped suddenly. The charms hanging from the ceiling began to sway as if caught in an invisible wind. Ronke's eyes darted around, terrified. "You shouldn't be here. They will be angry." Then came the voice, a deep, guttural whisper that seemed to crawl out of the walls. "You broke the rule." The freezer door slammed shut by itself. The knives on the table trembled, then lifted slowly into the air. The light flickered violently. Ronke screamed, clutching her head as if something was clawing into her mind. Blood trickled from her nose. Chuka ran toward the door, but it slammed shut, trapping them both inside. The walls began to pulse, like a beating heart. A dark liquid oozed from the cracks, smelling like stew. The shadows took shape, tall, faceless figures with hollow mouths. They surrounded Ronke. "You promised," they hissed. "No one must enter." "I didn't mean to." "Please," she cried. But it was too late. The shadows surged toward her, swallowing her whole. Her scream was short and sharp, then silence. When the lights flickered back, she was gone. Only her apron remained, soaked in red. Chuka fell to his knees, trembling, his mind barely holding together. He grabbed his camera and ran out of the building into the cold night, gasping for air. The next morning, the restaurant was quiet. The door to the back room had vanished, as if it had never existed. Ronke was never seen again. But Chuka's camera survived. Days later, he uploaded the footage. The internet exploded. Police raided the restaurant and found traces of human flesh inside the stew pots. The video was banned in Nigeria but spread across forums, dark web corners, and horror channels. People still whisper about it, the cursed footage that made viewers vomit or faint. The restaurant was sealed, its name painted over. But those who live near Yoba say sometimes, late at night, you can still smell stew cooking, rich, spicy, and unnervingly sweet.